Hey crafty friends, today we are going to sew this sweet Pegasus felt plushie. This is a great beginner project for kids who just want to start sewing or adults who want a simple hand sewing project. I have a free link on my website, linked in the description below. So go ahead and click that link, print your pattern, gather your supplies, come back here and we'll sew this together. You're going to need the following supplies: some felt in the color that you want your Pegasus, and I've got a different one that I'm going to use for the mane and tail, some scissors to cut with your felt, some embroidery floss, so just thicker thread, some thread, depending on how you want to do your eyes. I am going to do more detailed eyes for this. You can also just do circle eyes with embroidery floss. This is an embroidery floss needle. It just has a little bit wider eye right here for the thicker thread, something to trace your pattern with, something to stuff your finished plushie with. This is polyfill. It's what's made for most stuffed animals. You can also use felt scraps. I've used cotton balls. I've even used ripped up plastic bags. So use what you have. And then again, the pattern, there's a free link to it on my website in the description below. So go ahead, click that link, print your pattern, come back here, and we will put this together. Once you have all your pattern pieces cut out, it's time to start tracing them. Now, as you're getting your pieces ready to trace, don't stick them just in the middle of your felt. Put them as far or as close to the edge as you can. This will maximize your felt so you can use it for more projects. And all of these that say cut to, trace them one time on the side with the words and then flip your pattern piece over. And the second time you trace them on this blank side. This will just make our pieces line up better when we're sewing it. So go ahead, pause this video, trace all your pieces, and we'll come back here and cut them out together. Once you have your patterns all traced, it's time to start cutting them out. As you're cutting, just do small cuts with your scissors, and we want to go slow and careful, and you actually want to cut your pattern lines off just a little bit. This will ensure that they don't show up in our final product. You can see I'm cutting my lines off. I'm just cutting slow and careful around my pattern piece, and I would also highly suggest hanging on to these felt scraps that you cut off. These are great filler for inside your plushie when we're looking to fill, and even if you are using something like polyfill, great way to use and keep those straps. So go ahead, pause the video, get all your pattern pieces cut out, and we will come back here and work on the next step. Once we have all of our pieces cut out, we are going to start by sewing on the legs on both sides of our Pegasus. So go ahead, get a length of sewing floss that matches your felt. I am going to do a parallel knot, so I'm going to bring both ends of my thread together right here at the end and do just a simple loop knot. I put my fingers right over the ends where they're crossing, and then I pull on the side where my needle is so I can get that loop right there at the end. If it's not at the end, you can trim off some and then pull your needle straight to the bottom so this is straight and tight. Now, as you're looking at your pieces, you might see some pieces that have a little bit of drawing lines on it from when you're tracing. Find your one. If you flip them while you were going, you should be able to have an inside piece that doesn't show it for both sides and an outside piece that does. You can see my tracing lines a little bit on this, so I'm going to put that side down. Same thing with the leg. I'm going to check this over. I see a little bit of tracing lines there, so I'm actually going to grab this leg, double check them both. All right, so I am going to piece my unicorn or my Pegasus legs like this, and we're going to start by going from the back leg, poking it through the felt on both pieces, pulling it most of the way through, but not all the way. So I've got a little bit left over here, and then I'm just going back through, not exactly in the same place, over just a little bit. I'm going to pull this string tight up here, and then back here I'm going to stick my needle right through this loop, and then I'm going to pull it tight. So there, I've got my leg, and now we're going to do a knot stitch. So we're going to stick our needle in the middle of this bundle right here, and I'm just going to wrap the tail of it once, twice over the top of my needle. I'm going to put my thumb there to hold it in place. I'm going to pull this all the way out. I'm going to snip that thread. Now we're going to do the same thing. There's our first leg. I'm going to do the same thing for this back leg, and I like it positioned pretty close to this background leg. If you end up putting it up, just make sure you or your Pegasus have kind of like a big bum. So put it where you want it. We're going to do just another loop knot, tight, and again from the back so that our messy knots are on the same side. I'm going to pull it in and out. Pulling it through and knot. Okay, so we've got some arms there. Now we're going to take our other piece, and you want to line them up because we want the messy knots on the inside for both of them. So we want these to be opposites. So I'm going to flip it over this way. Again, put my legs on it. And I'm going to repeat those steps and attach the legs onto this one. All right, so now we have the legs on both sides of your Pegasus. The next thing is that we want to add an eye. So you can do a simple knot stitch, which is the same as that we did for these back here, or you can do a more detailed eye. In this case, I'm going to do a more detailed eye. So instead of using this embroidery floss, which is thicker, I have this thinner, just one single strand thread. I have already threaded my needle and I have both ends here together. I'm going to do a loop knot, tying both of those together. Now I'm going to come up here where I want the eye. I'm going to start right there. Just like before, I'm going to poke it through. I'm going to go back. So I'm going over just a little bit this time. Pull it through. And again, put my needle through these two pieces right here. All right, so I've got a little bit of an eye started right here, but I'm going to do a curvy eye. So what I want to do for this is I want to flip it over. And then I'm going to go just a little bit down. I'm going to poke it through right here. And then on this side, I'm going to take it and I'm going to poke it back through the corner of that stitch right there. Now I'm going to do just one more, going down a little bit past it. I'm going to go right back through where that first one came out. All right, and I want to give this one some eyelashes, so I'm actually going to come up here. Oh, maybe not quite so far. Move it down just a little. Pull it through, and then I'm going to go through this corner spot for each one of these eyelashes. There's one. I'm going to go over just a little bit. Pull it back through into that corner spot. And one more. Go down. Alright, so now I have my little more detailed eye with the eyelashes, and just like the others, I'm going to knot this in the back by putting it through this bundle of threads and looping this twice around the top of my needle, thumb on top to hold it in place, and snip. Now I'm going to make an eye the same way on the other side. Now that we have our eyes sewn onto both pieces, we're going to line them up together. We're going to grab our sewing floss, and this time, instead of doing two lines, I'm going to do just a single one, and mine's kind of short. So I actually usually measure this from about my fingertips to my shoulder. Don't want to do too much further because the line starts to tangle and gets kind of a lot to deal with. And this time, instead of doing the knot where I have them both together at the end, I'm just going to do a knot with a single end. There's my needle. I'm going to pull the second thread down a little bit so there's less to catch, but I do want to sew just single. And I am going to do my first stitch right here under these two legs. So I'm pushing the legs up. I'm going to go through both pieces of felt, pull it almost to the end like we did the other, and I don't have two pieces this time, I just have one, so I'm just going to stick my needle in the middle of a couple of them and pull it tight. If you have a big tail, you can just push it up inside of your Pegasus. Now we are going to do just one or two blanket stitches. A blanket stitch is where you go through both pieces of felt with your needle, and then you're going to grab this tail end of where it's anchored to your Pegasus, and you're going to pull it over the top of your needle and pull it through. This gives you a stitch that has these two little notches down and then the string across. It looks really nice. So cross to both pieces, pull your thread over the line and pull it through. All right, and before I do more than two stitches, I am going to pause and grab my tail piece, figure out where I want that to be. That looks about right to me. So I can fit a few more of these simplified blanket stitches before I get to that tail piece. So I'm just going to keep going through both pieces, over the top, pull it through. My line's getting caught, so I just need to lengthen it. All right, and now I've reached where I want to add this tail. We are going to do what's called a running stitch, which I think is even easier. So we're going to poke it through all 3 pieces of felt here. Pull your needle all the way through, and then going from the opposite side, we're going to just go back all the way through to the front. We're going to do that for the whole length of this tail. Back in one way, out the other. Just make sure you're getting all those pieces of felt. And ta-da, we have a tail attached. Now we're going to do another blanket stitch through both pieces, grab the tail, pull it over the top. This is where it's going to get a little bit tricky because we want to insert both the mane and the wings. So I'm going to take my mane, I'm going to stick it in here first, and you can sew it just like this, but I actually want my bangs at the top to stick out a little bit, so I'm going to pull them out so they can swoop over one of the sides of the face. Pull those up just a little. Now that I've got my mane in, I'm going to take my wings and I'm going to put them on either side of the mane inside my Pegasus body. Now you can decide how long you want your wings to be. The longer they are, the more they'll be able to flap over. These are a little bit long for me, so I'm going to push mine in. We're going to put both sets of wings in. You might need to reposition your mane hair. If you have sewing pins you want to use, this is a good point to pin those in. I don't love sewing pins, so I'm not going to use them, but I'm going to do maybe one more blanket stitch here, and then we're going to do a running stitch from the bottom of this mane all the way up to the top of wherever your bangs end. We don't want to go up around the ears. We're just going to go straight across so that they stay separate. So we're going to do, I'm going to fit one blanket stitch in right here. All right, and now to attach all of this, I'm going to go back to that running stitch where I go through all the pieces of felt on one side, pull it all the way in, and then go down just a little, go back through all the pieces. Oh, you can see I missed it right there, so I got to pull it back a little. Go. Oh, grab my foot, be careful not to pull in your other pieces. All right, now right up here by the ears, we're not going to continue this running stitch up and around the ears. We're going to go across this way. All right, so now we have our mane, our tail, and our wings stitched in. We're past the hair up here. We are going to continue with a blanket stitch around the unicorn's face into this first set of arms. And right there, we're going to pause to stuff it before we finish sewing it. So if your felt is filling off, just do your best to get the two ends of it lined up. I'm going to go through both pieces, grab that tail, wrap it over the top of the needle, pull it through. Down a little bit, both pieces of felt, tail over the top, pull it through. We're going to pause right here and we're going to start stuffing our Pegasus. You want to start with the furthest away things first, so I'm going to start with his buns and his face. I'm going to get my felt scraps. You usually, for this, the more delicate spots, you want a smaller piece. I'm just going to wiggle it up all the way into that nose. If you're having a hard time reaching, sometimes I grab the edge of a pencil or my scissors to help me nudge it into that faraway spot. Just keep building little by little. adding what you have. I'm out of scraps, so I'm going to use a little bit of my polyfill. And then when we're done, we're just going to pull this last stitch tight again. And this is where it gets tricky. So every stitch, you're probably going to want to push that polyfill or whatever you've got, whatever filler you're using in. And you want to try just to get the two edges of felt. And we're going to continue with the blanket stitch from here all the way to the end of this. Slow and steady, I'm pushing it in, getting my two edges over the top and over. All right, I'm right here at the end doing my last stitch. So I'm going back through my starter. Instead of pulling my needle through, I'm wrapping the end of my string twice around it, pulling it out, and then instead of cutting it here, I'm going to carefully poke this needle back in through the top of my Pegasus, keeping an eye on where my fingers are because I don't want to get cut. And over here, I'm just going to pull the string kind of tight. Make sure your leg's out of the way. And snip the string. I'm gonna wiggle it into that hole so it disappears a little bit. Now we can reposition our legs. And here we are with our finished felt Pegasus plushie. I hope you had a good time sewing this. I know that I did. If you enjoyed this or you like more sew along videos, be sure to come back next Monday. I will have a brand new pattern and sew along. And if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, share, follow along, all the things, and I can't wait to see you next week.